And we haven't had a rumble from a drinks trolley for a while, but Sister Susie's back in charge from the pub. And what have you selected for us today, Sus?
Well, I think Matt will like this one.
Okay.
And, you know, it's Wimbledon, so it has to be something with strawberries in it. But how about a strawberry gin lemonade?
Oh, why not?
Yeah. So strawberry puree, gin, and some lemonade, lots and lots of ice, and very delicious thirst quencher for the summer.
Thank you very much. I'll have a bitter lemon. Anyway, today's confession is signed, as I mentioned earlier. You can use my real name as I'm retiring shortly and leaving the country. However, I've decided to say it's from Mr. Wilkins.
Okay.
So thanks, Mr. Wilkins. Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Holly, Sister Susie. As the academic year draws to a close, and this being my final year before retiring from teaching after 20 years, I feel now is the opportunity to safely unburden myself. Although I seek forgiveness, I do believe that this would be a prime example of it being the system's fault, to quote Matt.
Good.
I taught a vocational qualification to post-16 students, and many of these students were not the academic type. Getting coursework and written assignments from many of them was a constant battle, with many reminders, prompts, deadline extensions, support and encouragement given throughout the year. Despite all of this, it was inevitable each year that some did not meet the requirements to pass their course, often having submitted no work all year. At the end of each academic year, the college would then have to claim each student's qualification from the exam board. This process involved filling in the details of the student, the course, the units and the grades, amongst other things, but these are the vital details. Now, early in my teaching career, this process was done on paper, with the paper then posted off to the exam board for them to process and issue a certificate. These certificates were sent via post to each student directly. I and my fellow teaching staff, satisfied that we had done everything possible to help these students, were content to let this minority move on from the course without achieving a qualification. Surely, as the individuals responsible for preparing these youngsters for adult life, a lesson in consequences would serve them well, especially since they hadn't appeared to have learned anything at all during their year in college. However, the department head had a different opinion. He felt that having failures on the course would put the department and college in a bad light, and strongly encouraged us, in a way that managers can and do, to quietly sign off. Yes, there would be failing students with a mere pass grade. Now, a pass grade was equivalent to an E grade in traditional A-level, so still no great achievement for the student, department or college, but a pass nevertheless, and the student would get a qualification and certificate for something they hadn't actually done. This still did not sit right with any of the teaching staff, passing a student who'd done no work. Some students worked hard all year and still only got a pass. Besides, this was academic fraud. It was lying, it was deceitful, it was not fair. It jeopardized the academic integrity of the entire national qualification and the reputation of the UK.
Correct.
Yes.
But alas, the strong encouragement from the department head saw me begrudgingly filling in the paperwork on a hot summer day, claiming a qualification for this minority. And then a thought came to my mind as my pen hovered above the student address section of the paperwork. Being the person responsible for bundling up the papers to post off, I knew no one else at the college would see anything that I wrote on these forms, and the exam board doesn't know where these students live. I didn't have to write in the student's actual address. They would never know. They weren't expecting a certificate anyway, because they didn't deserve one. And so, before I knew it, my pen was writing in my parents' address for each of these failing students. As I dropped all the claim paperwork into the post, I had a sudden sick feeling deep in my stomach. Surely the exam board will notice the duplicate addresses. They would undoubtedly and immediately contact the authorities. The college would be contacted. It would be traced back to me. My teaching career would be doomed. I could barely sleep that night or the subsequent nights without thinking about what I'd done. Until one day, a few weeks later, when an A4 brown cardboard-backed envelope dropped through my parents' letterbox. Inside, a certificate. In the next couple of days, 3 more identical envelopes arrived. And so for the next few years, until the claiming process went digital, I repeated this process for every student who failed their course. Not once did the exam board ever question why we had so many students living at the same address, or why their address was over 200 miles away from the college. The department head was happy, 100% pass rate on the course. We, the teaching staff, were happy. Only the students who actually completed the work for their course would receive a certificate. The students were happy. Those who had achieved got their qualification, and those who didn't, they didn't. I do not seek forgiveness from the failing students. They did not do the work, so they don't deserve a certificate. I do not seek forgiveness from the department head. I followed his instructions precisely. I passed each student and claimed their qualification. But I do seek forgiveness from the person at Exam Board HQ who processed these certificates for wasting their time for issuing certificates which were never to reach the student. And to the village postie in my parents' village. For the many extra items of post, he had to walk up a very steep hill for multiple days each summer. My parents, I will add, were happy to lend their address as they fully agreed with our stance on academic integrity. Yours in hopeful anticipation of forgiveness. What I'm saying is Mr. Wilkins, I beg your pardon.
Right.
Just change
Definitely
it.
Wilkins.
Yes,
With
definitely.
Wilkins, not Watkins.
That's right. Mr. Wilkins, who was a member of staff in the Jennings books, which is why I went for Mr. Wilkins.
Ah, yeah.
Anyway, I think this is ingenious and, I don't know, morally questionable. What do you say, Sister Susie?
Well, yeah, I think it is a bit morally questionable, isn't it? And I think Mr. Wilkins kind of knew that himself. And I feel sorry for the parents, really, because, what would have happened if that would have got questioned? And I feel like it wasn't really his fault, though, because it was probably his department head for demanding that he change the grades. So really, I don't think I can blame him, and I'm going to forgive him, because if it wasn't for the department head wanting 100% pass rate, none of it would have happened.
Yes, that's true. It's not really Mr. Wilkins' fault.
No.
No.
What do you say,
Mr.
Brother
Wilkins
Matthew?
is standing up, as you say, he's standing up for integrity in our education system. So we should applaud him for that. And that's why I am definitely going to forgive. And also, the parents, something bad might have happened to the parents. They might have ended up in chokey. Unlikely, I'd have thought, because of just being in receipt of envelopes. I don't think that's enough to send you down, Minod. There's the management, wasn't it? It was management's fault. Management, again, on the wrong side of things, the system, all of those things all combined to put the perfect storm, in my view, to keep going, which is why I choose to forgive.
I thought you might. Anyways, the people's verdict. Do you forgive Mr. Wilkins, please? I mean, in a way, there were no losers.
Nobody
I
lost.
think.
Yeah.
61054, first word is time. Just before the news, a confession from the person we'll call Mr. Wilkins, who is about to retire and about to leave the country.
Yes.
Though he does say, not related to this confession, it was just my retirement plan. Anyway, a story of academic dishonour, I guess you could say. Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Well, Samantha says, forgiven. Big respect for Mr. Wilkins. He's so right. There are students out there who work really hard all year and are absolutely ecstatic to get a pass grade. Just handing out a pass grade willy-nilly to anyone isn't teaching these kids anything. Anonymous says, forgiven. I hated this going on in the schools I've worked in. The kids should get what they deserve.
So this happens a lot.
It appears so. And Richard in Woking says, forgiven. Mr. Wilkins was lucky that the management didn't just force him to do the coursework for them. Happened at my school back in the day, as teachers were held to account for all the results. If kids don't want to turn up, they should get what they deserve.
Well, thank you for all the verdicts, and thank you for your confessions. And if you have one, maybe inspired by today's tale, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And that is the sound of the drinks trolley, bringing us once more into our confession feature. But what drink do we have to ease the passage?
I've gone for a Cordino Spritz, which is like an Aperol Spritz, but it's non-alcoholic. So you can have, all of the typically served as sparkling water and orange garnish. So it's nice and refreshing in the sunshine, but no alcohol.
Always drink responsibly. Matt, you can have a couple of those.
Yes.
Before you go.
Yeah.
Today's confession comes from Adam. Thank you, Adam. Names have been changed, as you know. By the way, don't complain if I read out your confession and change your name.
We change all the names.
I change all the names. Just because
That's the feature.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Adam is not Adam. Father Simon, I submit myself before the always merciful brother and the rarely merciful sister for forgiveness for what was really only a small transgression that happened many, many years ago. I was reminded of this incident by a confession that you had about some lads who had repeatedly taken the same bottles back to the same shop.
Oh, yes.
To once more collect the deposit, having reacquired them from the shop in the first place. It was in the early 70s, when times were very different, Father Simon, as you will know. I don't really remember. After school, an evening meal consumed, there was very little at home to occupy an adventurous teenager. One black and white TV, 2 parents and 3 TV channels, accompanied by the usual, "You'll watch what I want to watch."
Yeah.
I mean, how much Corrie can you stand? After completing my homework, Yes, Mum, I've done all my homework. Or possibly. We didn't get any homework today, Mum, honest. I would go out and meet up with my pals. What mischief could we get up to today? This was largely dictated by the seasons. Barricade a neighbour's car in the drive with large snowballs in the winter. Build a den and hide in a cornfield in summer. Fireworks were always good for a lark around bonfire night. You get the picture. I obviously realised the error of my ways and that you should never play with fireworks.
Never play with fireworks.
We lived in a leafy suburb in a Yorkshire town where many people had apple trees. It seemed to us that most people who had fruit trees were oblivious of them, as much of the fruit just simply fell to the ground and was either eaten by insects or just got scraped up and thrown away. Fair game, we thought. So around September, we would go scrumping, which is, of course, just a nicer way of saying stealing apples from our neighbours' trees. Often the apples were unripe and sour, but we didn't care. It was all good to us. Obviously, I realise now the error of my ways and that you should never steal anyone else's apples.
No.
The next door neighbour of one of my chums was that curmudgeonly neighbour who never let you have your ball back if it went into his garden. You know the type, seemingly about 100 years old, but probably about 40. An abundance of Brill cream, small twitchy moustache, tweed slippers, Morris Traveller, and so on.
Morris Traveller.
He was, however, particularly proud of the apples on his single tree, to the extent that every day he went out and counted how many apples there were, which he recorded on a chart on his clipboard.
What?
Wow.
This he did with much flourish to make sure that the urchin next door and his scruffy mates were not nicking them. During the school holidays, we watched this every day with much amusement, and so a plan was hatched. One Friday evening, we went out and about and acquired a few apples from other neighbours' trees, and under the cover of darkness and using some fishing line, we set about tying these extra apples to old Grumpy's tree, instantly increasing his apple inventory. The following day, being a Saturday, we hung around to witness the daily apple roll call. The neighbour appeared and he gave us his usual scowl. The scowl that said, "I know you lot. Keep your filthy hands off my fruit, you scruffy young urchins.
Wow, this is a new one.
The rule of law is there for a reason. You're on the side of lawlessness. I am on the side of justice."
Where is he from?
A bit American towards the end there. Justice.
Yorkshireman of San Francisco. Anyway, it was something like that. And with a flourish, he produced his clipboard and pen and began the daily count. A look of puzzlement crossed his face. How could this be? Have I miscounted? And so he recounted again and again 5 times, each time getting the same answer, becoming more and more exasperated. We, on the other hand, became more and more gleeful, all the time pretending not to notice. Even tried to persuade his wife to come and count them, something that she was absolutely resolutely refusing to do. "I've got extra apples." "Of course you have, dear." Eventually, he went back inside, and that was that. We never saw him counting his apples again. I think he probably suspected it was us, but what could he do? There was nothing missing. We did consider removing the extra apples to cause more confusion, but it seemed to be so much trouble, and we thought he'd probably be watching from behind the obligatory twitching net curtains. I therefore seek forgiveness not from old Misery Guts, he got all he deserved, but from his long-suffering wife, who no doubt got the thick of it, you know, his bad temper and all that kind of stuff, while he tried to find out how come he had 6 extra apples. Mind you, she was quite a formidable lady, so probably gave as good as she got.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure.
Wow.
Says Adam, just making an instant judgment there on Mrs. Neighbour next door, who clearly wanted absolutely nothing to do with the major choosing his and counting his apples. Anyway, I think this is quite ingenious because they played a little trick, but they actually gave him apples, although they had been stolen from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Redistribution and all that. What do you say, Suze?
Well, yes, very, very ingenious. I Adam, well done. That you used your time wisely, didn't you? But you did steal the apples, and it was probably a bit danger trying to get them back on the tree as well, wasn't it? So that's probably not great there. And you were a bit mean to the Mrs. Neighbour indoors, and I just think, well, maybe that neighbour wouldn't be as horrible if it wasn't for you pesky kids, would it? So I am not going to forgive.
Okay, Brother Matthew.
I'm going to forgive. Who goes around counting apples on their own tree? That doesn't make any... And do it on a clipboard. That's not going to stand up in court. It doesn't matter how many apples you think you had, Brian. It's how many apples are left now. And
how is he Brian?
Where did they get it? Well, that's what we understood his name was, Brian.
No,
I'm pretty sure you said Brian.
Just created
anyway,
that.
I mean, history doesn't record his name, but I'm pretty pretty sure he said Brian. Anyway, his wife also sounds a lot of fun. So I'm going to forgive because, nobody's stolen the apples apart from the ones that they did steal to put on top of the tree. But that doesn't matter because the apples have fallen off anyway. Anyway, no one steals fruit. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
But remember, of course, if you do any of that kind of stuff...
Yeah.
Oh, yes. High apples.
High apples.
61054. Do you forgive Adam, please? 61054. The first word is Simon. However, just before the news, an apple-themed confession from Adam, which I'm sure you worked out, about the curmudgeonly neighbour who counted his apples. So they thought it would be fun to add a few apples to his tree with hilarious consequences. Matt has the verdict.
Forgiven, says Rachel. He was stealing apples, but apples are good for you, and ultimately they probably would have been eaten by the birds or squirrels anyway. But Kay in Stourbridge says, not forgiven. If an apple tree is on his land, he's allowed to count the apples on his tree as many times as he likes. But Tim from Sutton Coldfield says, of course forgiven. After all, he added and didn't take away. Shame for the guy next door and his wife, though. He obviously wanted to be beside her when he counted them and couldn't get to the core of the problem.
There's a special tone of voice that you have when you deliver
beside her.
Comedy.
Yeah.
Thank you for the verdicts. Thank you for the confessions. Send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's confession time, which means we need a drink first of all, otherwise the whole thing's not worth it. So, what are we selecting from the trolley today, Suze?
Well, I've gone for something that's suitable if it is a bit warm. It's a table beer. It's called Lula from Beak Brewery in East Sussex. It's light citrusy and it's only 3.5%.
Very nice, yeah.
Very delicious.
What's a table beer?
I think it's traditionally French, and it comes for a beer that you can drink while you eat, so that you could have a few of them without it causing too much trouble.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much indeed for the consideration. Today's confession comes from Minnie. Thank you, Minnie, for this tale. Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Holly, Sister Susie, and the Forgiving Collective. Many years ago, as a bored 11-year-old girl, I was wandering around a garden on a hill with a school just outside London. We're keeping it vague.
Yes.
Friends had gone away for the holidays. Mum was busy gardening and doing house things, and her partner was being very serious in writing a book on economics.
Oh,
yawn.
Very serious.
A trip to a local town was on offer, and I was sat in the car with my hard-earned pocket money. We, that's Mum and I, visited Scan Scene, a shop which sold delightful stationery, small toys and pretty china. Mum was busy, distracted by the gift section, but I walked slowly around looking for something really special. And a rack of interesting objects caught my eye. New, shiny and completely at odds with the mood of the rest of the shop. Plastic eggs, false moustaches and joke cards. And what do we have here? Fart powder. Yes, it looked perfect. And on the pack it promised epic results.
Oh, dear.
I instantly knew it was a bad thing, but it had to be done. However, cutting a long story short, the results were disappointing. At this point, I perhaps...
What? That's all we're getting?
Yeah, that's what you get.
Come on.
At this point, I perhaps could have chosen a better hobby, but instead I decided to up my game. And soon we were back at Scan Scene. And while Mum was looking at more attractive gold items, which had gone galactic,
Yeah, Dad.
I hovered around them, my now favourite area of jokes. And I spied my prey. At this point, I'm going to mention, I'd found bangers. Tiny little bangers.
Oh, those, yes. Yeah, I remember them.
Now, at this point, I'm going to mention that my mum was a dedicated smoker, and like all 11-year-olds, I wanted her to stop. I stole a couple of cigarettes from Mum's packet and very carefully removed some tobacco and placed one banger in each of the cigarettes, giving myself a greater percentage of success. And so I waited and watched. And I didn't have to wait too long. Suddenly there was a massive explosion, followed immediately by an exclamation of, "Who the heck put a bomb in my fags?" Of course, I had to own up. Because apparently it's not the kind of thing that people who write economics books do, which left me. So the summer dragged on and it was soon time for the autumn term, and this necessitated a trip to the shop where we could buy stationery for school, and I had the perfect shop in mind. The economics book had apparently been written, so I was accompanied by a serious writer who, on my mother's orders, was not allowed to let me near that stupid joke section. Unfortunately, he didn't realise at this stage that he was dealing with a persuasive master criminal, and I steered him towards the joke area and we settled on a whoopee cushion.
Right.
So the place was the drawing room, Whilst I was supposed to be watching Blue Peter, I was actually practicing placing a fully charged whoopee cushion under the seats of various comfortable chairs or sofas, like a precision engineer checking the perfect angle, mass, ratio for optimal performance, that kind of thing. Eventually one evening I was ready and I had it set it up perfectly. Mum's favourite chair was planted and ready to blow. Now, because the adults worked in a very prestigious school on the hill, occasionally it was their turn to host a dinner for one of the governors of the school.
Oh, no.
Becoming very Harry Potter.
No.
Apparently, that particular evening, we had a very important governor who was also a High Court judge.
Oh,
Of course he
and
was.
the vicar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really important and influential. Unfortunately, this information had not been shared with me. Supper was served in the kitchen. Coffee would be served in the drawing room. We were soon all stood in the drawing room, and knowing how cross Mum had been with the tampered fags, this situation was definitely worse because the potential for Mum's embarrassment in front of a special guest made the situation unbearable. I held out a bit of hope that the whoopee cushion may have deflated.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But
Yeah.
that hope was soon dashed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Mum who was stood in front of the offending chair. It was, of course, the High
Yes.
Court judge.
Of course
And
it
part-time
was.
vicar. That's not true. I watched in terror as the scene unfolded. Apparently, judges don't just sit carefully after a good meal and some fine wine. No,
Oh, no. This is just no.
they throw themselves down.
Yeah, I'll bet they do.
The
God,
judge's
the
mass
noise.
velocity ratio meant that the whoopee cushion did indeed explode with
Yeah.
epic force. And the noise was triumphant, with a pleasing little after noise too.
Oh, no.
Horrified and surprised expressions were everywhere, including myself. It had worked, hooray, but the wrong person, oh no. I saw my mum's head turn to me and just about caught her eye, and before I could be brought to justice, I did what all mastermind criminals do, and I scarpered. I was out of the drawing room and up the stairs faster than a rat off a sinking ship. Heart in mouth, later, I crept down and looked around the corner to see Mum and the economist clutching the brass handle of the door of the drawing room and laughing. Not just laughing, but laugh crying. Silent knee-buckling hysteria. I'd never seen them laugh like this before. However, shortly after this, I was sent away to boarding school.
Right.
And so, collective, to wrap up this tale, I come humbly before you. Sadly, all of the people in this story have since passed away, except myself, although it was close. And I seek forgiveness, it says Minnie. So that's why we were quick going through the fart powder, because we had
Yeah,
other,
much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
other
Yeah,
joys
yeah,
to
yeah.
come. So much fun to be had with a whoopee cushion. So that's Minnie, as in Minnie the Minx, I think. What do you say, Sister Susie?
Yeah, Minnie the Mix. Well done. There's a lot of commitment there, I think. I've got a few issues with it, though, because, I know that you said that you didn't know that the judge, vicar, lawyer person was coming to dinner, but as soon as, you had the whole of dinner where he was sat there, where you could have excused yourself and gone and removed said whoopee cushion. So I feel like there are opportunities where you could have got rid of it.
Yes.
But it was very, very funny. And I like that it had a little extra squeak at the end. That
Yes.
sounds, the little Tommy squeaker sounds funny at the end there. And, it made your mum laugh. And, you got sent off to boarding school. So I feel like maybe you suffered enough. But so I kind of want to forgive you. Just because.
Okay.
Very, very, very funny.
Brother Matthew.
I mean, that's my favourite for a while. That who put a bomb in my fags? I mean, you can't. You'd think you wouldn't be able
Danger,
to improve
danger,
on
though, that.
Yes.
But it turns out you can by putting a whoopee cushion underneath High Court judge. So yeah, no, I'm definitely going to forgive. I mean, she could have removed it when she realised that he was
Yeah,
going to sit there,
should have.
but it was actually much funnier to have a High Court judge making that sound with the satisfying after effect.
And they all died.
And they all died. So.
Not because of the whoopee
No,
cushion.
not because of that. But who knows?
No.
Maybe. No. So definitely forgive.
61054. First word is Simon. Forgiveness on the people's verdict for Minnie. Yes or no? Just before the news at 6 o'clock, an epic confession which touched on fart powder, whoopee cushions, bangers, an economist, a mum who smoked a lot, and a High Court judge. What more could you ask for, I think, is the question. People's verdict is in. Here we go.
Everyone's forgiving tonight. Forgiven, says Zara. As soon as the mention of the school governor stroke High Court judge got mentioned, I knew there'd be trouble. Sounds like everyone had a laugh. No one got hurt. I'm forgiving. Tom, age 31 on the M62, forgiven. I forgive because of a very funny story story. I forgive because farts are and always will be very, very funny. And Jeff in Chepstow says that has to be one of the best described confessions in addition to the fabulous content. Love it.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to Minnie for sending in the confession. It was particularly well written. It was epic in length. You should have seen the original, which is like twice as long. We should do like an extended version, shouldn't we? Like a 12-inch. That would be interesting. Anyway, send your confessions, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And don't forget, there'll be a new podcast for you on Friday.
Oh, that'll do.
That sounds rather fine. Okay, that's on the way. But first of all, a little sharpener, maybe from the drinks trolley. What are you offering us today, Suze?
Well, I'll try and do my best Matt impression in that I've chosen a crisp, dry, classic lager, a Spanish lager.
Oh,
How
yeah.
about a Estrella Galicia?
Oh.
4.7%. Very refreshing.
Estrella Galicia.
Estrella Galicia.
Very
Okay,
good.
that's very good.
That's what
Okay.
he said.
Well, we'll have a few rounds of that, but only after the show,
Yeah, of
obviously.
course.
Today's confession, last of the week, comes from Disco Dave. Thanks, Disco Dave, for this very unusual tale, I think. Simon and the excellent Drive Time team. In the early 1990s, I was given a company car to work with. It was a Rover 216 SE in black. Nothing strange about that. Just a car to drive from one company to another to carry out my work. It was an unexceptional car in every way. Upholstery, engine, bodywork, radio cassette player, all just fine. But whilst driving this car, strange things would happen on the road with other car users. Cars would flash me and be very nice to me, as in flash me in to let me go into a queue. They'd be very nice. When I was at traffic lights, people would point and start talking about my car. I thought it was a bit strange. It was just a normal Rover 216 SE. What was going on? Well, what
was going on?
is going on? Then I was invited to a party at a hotel. Whilst I was there, one of the guests said to me, "Be very careful when driving out of the car park because the police are in attendance. So make sure you don't drink and make sure you always drive carefully." So I said to the guest in question, "How do you know the police are in the car park?" He said, "See that black police Rover 216?
Oh, right.
That's a police car. Look at the registration plate. That is an unmarked police car."
Oh.
So apparently, this is the 1990s, Greater Manchester Police had bought a job lot of cars and their registration plates started as normal, but the last three letters were SNE. And my plate was a bunch of numbers and then SNE. I didn't say anything and then realised why all the funny looks and the people pointing at my company car had happened. Well, my car was not a police car. I am not a police officer. However,
Oh, no.
Did I use the situation to my advantage? Too right I did. It was great driving along and people would suddenly slow down or pull in thinking I was the police. How does everyone know? I don't know. Anyway, at the traffic lights, I would be flashed in and let through. It was great. Going to work was a real joy. I never seemed to get held up in a traffic jam. Commuters sometimes pulled over to let me through. At work conferences, word would seem to go round that an undercover cop was in attendance. I would smile knowingly, make notes and look intense with smouldering eyes and a set jaw. I bought a leather jacket and a series of hats to wear as a disguise. If anyone got too interested and too close, I would glower in a terrifying way, and that would be that. Undercover officers, I had imagined, may also carry concealed equipment, so I would make a point of checking what turned out to be actually just my calculator, but it was in my breast pocket.
Oh, yeah.
In my mind, I was Bodie, or was it Doyle from ITV's The Professionals?
Yeah.
Definitely not the older guy from Upstairs, Downstairs.
No, not him.
Swagger, poise, and deadly if crossed. That was me. And then a colleague of mine borrowed the car whilst I was on holiday and rammed the car into a tree. So my life of being let into traffic and being flashed speed up my journey.
Glossed over that.
Finished.
Right, fine.
Driving a car without police-looking number plate wasn't the same anymore. So clearly, I haven't really done anything wrong. It was just that people thought I was undercover police. So I'd like to apologise to real undercover police officers who work for Greater Manchester Police and all those other drivers during the early 1990s who thought my car was an unmarked police car just because the last three letters were SNE. Well, I find this particularly intriguing. How was this general knowledge that the undercover police, who presumably by definition were secret,
Yeah.
they all had the same cars? I don't know. This sounds like inefficient police work to me. But what do I know? Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, it's a bit like those like myths, isn't it, that you hear that go around. You know, word got to word. Oh, that's a undercover police car, don't you? And actually, it probably wasn't. It was probably just a man who might look like a bit like a policeman. I feel like maybe he hasn't got anything to ask forgiveness for here. However, it was other people, but he did very much lean into the role, didn't he? He bought his leather jacket. He had lots and lots of hats. I feel like he was amping it up and just, wanted people to presume he was a police officer. And, impersonating a police officer is actually...
Except he wasn't. He was just wearing a leather jacket. And nothing says undercover cop than a guy with lots of hats.
Yes.
Well, yes. I'm still not forgiving.
Okay.
I think he took it too far.
Brother Matthew.
Well, they all behaved, didn't they? Everyone was behaving on the road, so actually wasn't that a good thing? And there he was in his hats. I've never seen a policeman in a hat, apart from the man.
But you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know, no.
Yeah.
And also, as you say, why are the police buying job lots of cars where they're all the same car? So everyone finds out, those cars are all for the undercover cops. It defeats the whole purpose. Drive around in a Micra maybe, or a Yugo, as I did for a number of years.
Were you a cop?
Yeah, no, I wasn't.
There you go.
But I would have been a perfect cover because no one would have suspected me in that car. Okay. Yes, I'm going to forgive because it all turned out well in the end.
Did it?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, the people's forgiveness, please, for Disco Dave. Do you forgive him, yes or no? 61054 on the text. First word has to be Simon. Forgiveness or not? The verdict is in on today's confession, which came from Disco Dave, who, for work, was given a Rover 216E. And it had the registration number letters, the last three letters were SNE, which apparently everyone in the Greater Manchester area knew instantly meant that he was an undercover cop. Except he wasn't an undercover cop, but he just enjoyed the benefits. Anyway, people's verdict, here we go.
So James in Manchester says, forgiven. I'd have absolutely done the same. He didn't know the car looked like a police car when he bought it. Forgiven, says Barry. As Matt says, people behaved better on the road. So surely this is a win-win. And Gordon McFarlane in Leeds says, forgiven. I had a similar situation. I had a white Jag, again, ex-police spec. And I used to wear a lime green T-shirt. So on the motorway, drivers moved out of the way. It was great fun watching their faces.
So clearly this is a thing.
Yeah.
And people dress appropriately. All right, although it's slightly misleading, so we shouldn't encourage it.
No.
Thank you for the verdicts and thank you for the confessions. Send them to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.